Cheese, no design on my jacket. Work hard and I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hearing that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slurry. Got a blast, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Adam Caplan with AC Radio, the voice in your ears. And I'm sipping on that yak right now. Got a little Henny in the cup with a little DC. How you doing? Shout out to my boy Kuj. And listen, we're fresh off our last event of the year, UFC Vegas 66 at the world-renowned UFC Apex, which, you know, has a lot of mixed reviews, especially from my man Helwani. But I got to say, if we're looking at the knockout and the finishing rates that are happening at the Apex, and if you look at all of the money that the UFC is saving from a financial side, it's kind of hard not to understand why they're putting the fights on at the Apex. And, you know, we had another great card. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into the main card. We're going to cut right to Drew Dober versus Bobby Green. What a great matchup. Southpaw versus Southpaw. Bobby Green was throwing all of his punches from the hip. He had his hands down the entire fight. And you know how Drew Dober rolls. He loves to take shots, and he loves to give them right back. And, you know, look, in that first round, Bobby was really successful with the jab. That right jab was landing all day on Drew Dober, and that helped set up that left hand as well. But you best believe Drew was obviously still throwing shots, and caution to the wind with that right hand, right hook, left hand as well. But, you know, the biggest thing for me was what happened in the second round. Bobby's coaches started screaming, start throwing that right kick to the body. And, well, actually, before that, let's get it straight. Bobby was backing up to the cage too much. He was controlling the center in the first round, but then in that second round, he was backing up against the cage way too much. And then what started to happen is he had less space to circle, but also throw his counters. So what happened is Bobby's coaches started telling him that you should throw that right kick to the body. He did successfully land that right kick to the body, but he was still quite close to the cage. And after he threw the right kick to the body from orthodox, he didn't switch back to southpaw. He stayed in orthodox. And we've talked about this before on AC Radio. There are some fighters that are only successful at throwing certain techniques from certain stances. And obviously that right kick to the body from orthodox is a great shot to throw against the southpaw. But at the same time, when you don't switch back to your dominant stance, there's a very high chance that your defense is going to be hindered. Not all fighters are able to switch stances and pull off the same punches, the same kicks, the same combinations, and the same amount of footwork and head movement, because everything now becomes the opposite. So what happened there is Bobby Green was reluctant with his jab, was giving his back to the cage a little too much in that second round, and then after he threw that right body kick, he stayed in orthodox, and that's where Drew Dober took over and ended up winning the fight by knockout. So congratulations to Drew Dober, who's going to appear on my man Dale's show with Punch List MMA. So stay tuned for that one. Dale's one of my guys in the industry and in the space, a great guy. A knowledgeable guy in the betting realm as well. And, you know, I'm looking forward to that interview. So congratulations to Drew Dober, who capitalized on some of the errors of Bobby Green. But you best believe Bobby Green is a tough matchup for anybody. And after that Paddy Pimblett fight, I was thinking maybe the winner or loser of Drew Dober versus Bobby Green could be a potential matchup, or Vince Pichel, Terrence McKinney as well. But, you know, gotta say, after that fight, I don't know if I want to see Paddy in there with either of those guys either, but we're going to get to Paddy a little later in the show. Next, we have Amir Albazi versus Alessandro Costa, and that was another banger of a fight. Why? Because Amir Albazi is just showing more and more why he is going to be a contender in this flyweight division. He's got a great right hand. He bounces off the feet well, but most importantly, he backs you up with his footwork and his jab to get you up on that cage and then take you down and control you there. And that's more or less what he did against Costa, but he was finding a lot more success on the feet in the end, because I think always having that fear of the takedown from a great wrestler like Albazi will have someone like Costa thinking. So I think that takedown always being there was a factor as well, which is why he was able to land that great left uppercut, I believe, and then was able to finish the round with a right hand. So he was able to finish the fight with a right hand. So Albazi, I mean, look, man, great wrestling, great jab, light on the feet, but also could show that his boxing is ever improving as well. And we already knew that he had good boxing. But when you finish Costa with a beautiful right hand like that, you gotta think that the UFC is paying attention. He's a good-looking guy with a British accent, you know, representing Egypt, representing Africa, which is another continent and probably the next continent that the UFC is really looking to take over, especially by putting on major fights there. Now, I know that Egypt and obviously Nigeria are in two different parts of Africa, but, you know, gotta say, any way that you could beef up this card, I think that Amir Albazi could potentially be a great factor on the first UFC African card. And also, like I said, when you have a flyweight that finishes fights and is well-rounded and exciting, you got a future star in the making, because as you can see, we're doing Figgy versus Moreno for the 4th time at UFC 283, and that's the first time that the UFC has ever put on 4 matches in a row, or 4 rematches. So, you know, Amir Albazi, congratulations to him. He is a well-rounded guy, and Costa will be back. He will be back because he still did take the fight on short notice. And I actually think when Brandon Royval comes back from that broken wrist, that him versus Albazi is a great fight to make. So congratulations to him. Sipping on that yak, baby. And we got Arman Tsarukyan versus Damir Ismagulov. 2 very simple names to pronounce. Listen, Ismagulov has a great jab, great footwork, and he's a savage on the feet, and he's no stranger to the wrestling department. But Tsarukyan fought a smart fucking fight. He didn't want to put as much risk on the feet. He went right to his bread and butter and definitely controlled Damir in that 1st and 3rd round. Got the double leg, put the head to the outside, got the grapevine going, and Arman Tsarukyan won the fight 29-28. Ismagulov is still a fucking stud in the division. His stock will not lower at all. And, you know, speaking of a fight that happened where stock is not going to lower at all, we had Nurmagomedov versus Saidyokub Kakhramonov. And I'm going to keep that in there of me completely butchering the last name, because I got to say, you know, I give big ups to John Anik, Bruce Buffer, all of these guys that are constantly preparing for all of the names that have been coming in the UFC. Because I got to say, over in Russia and over in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and etc., these fucking guys and girls have been staking a claim inside of the UFC, and they've been making, you know, white folks like me really work for my pronunciation. So that was a matchup and a half. That was a bantamweight matchup on the prelims that I have to bring up, because, you know, as soon as people see the last name Nurmagomedov, they think right away that he's related to Khabib, and he's not. That's the fact, number one. Number two is that not only does he have dominant wrestling, Said Nurmagomedov, but this fucking guy will go with you on the feet. But what really impressed me between the two of these guys was the level of grappling. Both opponents almost could have finished each other with a guillotine. In the end, Said Nurmagomedov was successful, but if you think Saidyokub's stock was lowered in any way, you are strongly mistaken, because he has shown that in the bantamweight division, he is a motherfucker of an opponent. His stand-up is good. His wrestling is good. Kid's got a good look to him as well. Both of these guys' stocks have completely skyrocketed after this, you best believe. So that was a great matchup, worth mentioning, and I do promise I am going to get better with my pronunciations, and I do give myself credit from the first episode that I've done till now that I've definitely done a hell of a lot of a better job. So that was a tough one to pronounce, but it was definitely not a tough one to enjoy. That was a great fight. And now it brings us to the main event. We have Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland. Controversial in a way, kind of. Listen, I had Strickland up 2-0. I had Jared winning the 3rd and the 5th. The 4th round was a little bit difficult to score. I could see why it was a difficult fight for the judges to score. 2 judges had it 4-1 for Jared. Another guy had it Sal D'Amato had it 4-1 for Sean. Listen, it's tough. Why? Because Strickland is a very, very good striker, an accurate striker, and actually had a different game plan in this fight, being more patient, moving backwards a bit more, and also circling away from that right hand that he didn't do against Pereira, which I think he learned from his lesson there. Strickland doesn't necessarily throw with a lot of devastating power, and his physique and his figure doesn't really compare to the likes of Jared Cannonier, who looks like he's cut out of stone and also throws nuclear bombs with that right hand left hook. So even though Sean was up in the significant strikes and I had him peppering Cannonier for the first 2 rounds, you could start to see that unlike the popular opinion where Strickland was going to actually pick up the volume in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Cannonier actually did a really good job in doing that. And even though Strickland was more successful landing to the head only of Cannonier, you can't take away the fact that Cannonier was ripping to the body and ripping to the leg kicks as well. So those do count significantly, but it's a little bit skewed sometimes, I find, when you're scoring a matchup like this, because everything Cannonier throws has shock value to it. Even if he misses, you're still going, oh shit, that was a close one. When Strickland constantly lands with that volume and peppers people with punches and doesn't necessarily snap their head back, it's kind of hard maybe to score the shock value of those punches. But even though, listen, the volume was there in the first 2 rounds and it continued in the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th, but I felt that Cannonier still picked up the momentum in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I could definitely see how either fighter could have won this fight 4-1 or 3-2, but I'm not necessarily upset with the decision. But it raises a lot of question because Cannonier, I felt, controlled the momentum in the octagon and also pressed the action moving forward a little bit more. Even though I think Strickland pressed the action just as much, I think from an octagon control standpoint, Cannonier was more successful in that fight. But then we saw in the Jared Gordon fight versus Paddy that doesn't mean fuck all. So once again, we're left scratching our heads. But I've been really liking the whole Verdict MMA website because AI has been playing a factor in that. And perhaps we could see the future of 3 to 6 judges accompanied with AI. I think that could be a good complementary thing because what we're seeing is the judges have to score a 10-9 or 10-8. But when you're watching it on Verdict MMA, this website is scoring the fights to the decimal points. And in a lot of ways, some of these fighters are not even getting 10 points. They're literally winning by 0.25 of a decimal, which is really showing you how much closer these fights actually are. And I agree with that because those 5 rounds versus Cannonier and Strickland were not decided by 1 full point. They were decided by a decimal point. So I love that. I love the fact that maybe AI might be taking a place in here and folks are like, oh, you're going to trust a robot. You could rig it. You could hack it. You could manipulate it. Yeah, guess what? You could do the same fucking thing with people. You can wine them, you can dine them, and sometimes you can 69 them. So if you think that AI is going to play more of a factor in some fuckery than humans, I actually don't think that is the case. So I would maybe like to see a combination of the two because like we saw in Cannonier versus Strickland, that fight could have gone 4-1 or 3-2 either way for both guys. Do I think that there's rematch implications? No, absolutely not. Would I be fucking gutted and frustrated if I was on the other end of that decision? Yeah, absolutely. Because I could see why Sean Strickland did win that fight. But at the same time, I don't think he controlled the octagon enough. I don't think he threw with enough variety. And I do think that, unfortunately, when you're fighting a beast in Jared Cannonier, it's pretty clear to me why the shock value of Jared Cannonier is going to have a skewed outlook versus the shots that are coming from maybe the everyday looking man in Sean Strickland. So that's what I got for you. Do I have a decisive answer? No. Because it doesn't seem like anybody has a decisive answer in this sport. There's too many variables. There's too many different opinions. There's not enough clear criteria. And at the end of the day, every single fucking person is, to an extent, having a little bit of an emotion and a little bit of a biased opinion in some of their justifications. So AC tries to keep it as real as possible, but you know me. I'm human like everybody else. I put my pants on the same way as y'all, maybe. And You might not agree with some of the things that I say either, but that doesn't mean that I'm wrong, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong either. It means that we live to fight another day in the world of MMA. So if you like my rhymes and you like my rips, and stay tuned for what I got next for you, because I got a question for the viewers. I'm wondering what we think about Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, and I can't believe I'm announcing his name first, but you know for a fact that, you know, the legend is going to walk second in this one, in the notorious one, Conor McGregor. What do you guys think of that matchup? Because if we take away the fact that Conor looks 185 to 190 pounds of muscle, if we take away that factor, if we look at where both guys are in their career, to me, the matchup kind of makes sense. At what weight? I'm not sure. Maybe 160, 165, maybe 170, maybe 155. I don't really know, but think about it. If you put the fight at a catch weight at 165, which Dana has been reluctant to do for a very long time, if you put the matchup at 165, if Paddy loses a spectacle against Conor McGregor, which most people would anticipate he would, he lost the fight outside of the division and he lost to a legend in Conor McGregor, that most people would give the advantage to Conor on. I don't think that that fight necessarily hurts Paddy's stock should he lose. I think that the fight could only grow and could only grow Paddy's stock. But more importantly, like, do we think that Paddy versus Conor is one of the biggest fights that the UFC could make right now? Like, I'm wondering, does John Jones versus Francis Ngannou do more buys than Paddy Pimblett versus Conor McGregor? That's what I'm wondering about. I mean, you do Conor versus Paddy at Wembley Stadium, you sell it out to the gills, you put it on during the day where everybody in North America will be happy to watch. I think that it's a good matchup. Paddy has good jiu-jitsu. He has good charisma, and he's somebody that Conor won't necessarily have to work as hard to help build a pay-per-view, which I think is very enticing to Conor, because I think he knows time and time again he's been the reason why every single fight has been a box office explosion. So I think that the matchup is appealing because, you know, you got the Irish versus, you got the Dubliners versus the Liverpoolians, which I think is a fucking crazy matchup. You got the Scousers versus, you know, the Dubs. And, I think that makes a really good matchup. But I'm wondering what you guys think. Do you think that it makes absolutely no sense? Because I kind of think it does. Conor's not in the rankings. Paddy Pimblett isn't either. We don't necessarily have much confidence in Paddy beating anybody in the top 20 or top 15 at this moment, and Conor's not in the rankings either. So why not make the matchup now? I don't think that anybody's stock is hurt. I think Conor's stock gets fucking ruined if he loses to Paddy, but I don't think that Paddy's stock gets ruined by losing to McGregor, because I think based off of his performance against Gordon and his boxing capabilities, I think most folks would bet against Paddy and would favor Conor winning by knockout. So, you know, I think it's a good matchup. Call me crazy, but I think that it's one of the biggest fights the UFC could make. I think they could blow the box office off it. I think that if they make the fight at a catch weight, it won't hurt Paddy's stock as much in the lightweight division. And another thing too is like, we don't want to see Conor go in there and fight Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev in his first fight back in the UFC. We don't want to fucking see it. We don't want to see it. So in my eyes, I think we're going to see a fight like Paddy Pimblett versus Conor McGregor, or maybe we'll see Conor McGregor versus Jorge Masvidal. I'm not really sure what we're going to see, but if I'm looking at the career of Conor McGregor, I don't want to put him in there right now with a top 10 guy in the lightweight division, and I don't necessarily want to put him in there with the top 5 in the welterweight. Maybe there's a couple guys between, 6 and 12 that I would put him in at welterweight with, but I highly doubt that as well. So Paddy Pimblett versus Conor McGregor is one of my takes on the biggest fight or one of the biggest fights that the UFC could make in 2023, maybe 2024, but I think 2023, let's get it a little bit earlier in there. Come on, man. Paddy the Baddy versus the notorious one, Conor McGregor, in July this year. Nothing more to me than a fucking sellout spectacle. Maybe not in July, because they'll probably have a title fight be at the top of that bill. And you best believe that fight ain't going to be a 3-rounder. So Wembley Stadium, Conor McGregor versus Paddy Pimblett. I love that fight. Wonder what y'all take is. I don't usually ask a question like this. This is something new that I brought to the table. Clearly, you could see that I'm more in tune for this matchup because of the storyline and perhaps where both guys are at in their career. Didn't necessarily break it down from a bell-to-bell scenario like I sometimes do, but let me know your thoughts on that one. So that's all I got for you today. Another great episode. AC Radio, we're almost at 100 subscribers on YouTube. The numbers are looking good on YouTube. The support, the camaraderie that I've built with people in the space in the industry over the last few weeks, truly feel like the momentum is building. You can see the spit flying out of my mouth on that one. I feel like the momentum is building. I feel like 2023 is going to be a big year for AC. It's not our last episode of the year, though. Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up the year real fucking nicely. I'm going to gift wrap that shit up to you like a new Lamborghini. And you best believe that 2023 AC is coming, baby. Fuck bitches, get money. Let's do this. We out.
Big cheese, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hear that racket. Dogs came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking